Hi everyone. You might hear cat licking in the back. Okay, Brown. Okay, but anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to 94 Chops. This is my YouTube channel just to kind of get talkative. And today the topic of discussion, shall we say, is about firing people. If you want the astrological information that goes with this, I am looking up Oya placements in the zodiac. So if you would like to help out with Oya readings, please feel free. I just did a Yamayan reading, Saturn. If you're into Saturn placements, Saturn returns, that is a Yamayan thing, and you can go ahead and look into Saturn returns of your Saturn placements. Anyway, but moving on to the hot topic of the topic today, to get talkative, you're going to talk about why firing people is not politically correct. Okay, why in our 2023 world of experiences do we understand firing people to be a lawsuit? Okay, you want to understand it not only to be politically incorrect, but also what I mean by PC is that it's not necessarily legal. Okay, firing someone takes sort of like a process, and technically, like, you can sue for wrongful termination, which is like a what we like to say common um, lawsuit that lawyers deal with, especially if you're like an artist or if you're like someone who does contract work, and you feel like there's some type of pay that needs to be adjusted, or there was some type of negotiation in a contract that needs to be renegotiated. Those are things that like a lawyer would handle. So from a law student or law scholar's perspective or law librarian's perspective, you want, not that I am one of those things, okay, just leaning more, okay, into the idea of talking about the ideas around why it's not necessarily, why it's frowned upon in terms of like a Fortune 500, why, businesses hire people to train employees. It goes on those lines, in terms of like, not necessarily, for me, it's not around necessarily being compliant in ethics, but one could argue it's more around, for me, data and development. So it's a little bit more around sort of from a business standpoint and from my own, non-for-profit experience, CFO of my own little enterprise. I like to let folks know that, firing people, having a sort of determination by an organization is something that someone took their time to do. So you have to think about it like that. It's not something that someone's going to want to sit down and have to do. Firing people isn't something that is like, exciting. Companies usually don't, even when they're interviewing managers, mention the process of firing people, because even managers, in terms of a business structure, have a problem in terms of training properly terminating people without, setting up themselves for, I like to say, gray area. Okay. And so, why gray area in terms of organizations and why just things not necessarily being coherent sort of lies a little bit more in the experience of citizenship. So, that all ties to how you activate and authorize your um, citizenship. So, you can sign, as authorizing, or as authoring, a sort of way of signing your part, your I like to say, at least, your way of doing things. Okay, as your way of being part of the experience. And so, why signatures are so important in our day to day is more or less about acknowledgement, and it just shows that there is some type of representation of acknowledgement. Anyway, so why, again, firing people is not PC, because again, it lines you up for, short answer, it lines you up for a gray area. You are liable for lawsuits. Not necessarily that you will get sued, but you will have that feeling, that cloud kind of hanging over you, What if I have to fire someone else, and it becomes like a thing? You know what I mean? So that's just like a manager's thing. That's like a organizational standard. Like, am I gonna have to fire someone else now? Is this gonna be like a domino effect? Am I gonna have to find more people? It's not necessarily stressful, but it's just a thing that kind of goes through the process. So, not that it doesn't happen. Okay, not that things can't continue. In my line of work, I don't necessarily argue that it's necessary. And why I don't think it's necessary again is because I think, just in terms of mental health and holistic health, there is a particular sort of synchronicity to training, and there is a certain reason why employees train, you know, why companies train employees. It is, and so one of those is to see new experiences and how they can develop, more in terms of their own business model. And so they'd like to see, oh, what are some of the skill sets, everyone who's applied to work here, what are the skill sets, in terms of the work field might this particular population have? And so you might have, have experience working here, have experience working here, have a certificate in this, I have experience working there, or they can just be, employees that have been with you. And if that's the case, you always want to train your employees because they've only been with you, so they don't know what the right answer is. So again, it makes you look better because it's like, okay, well, I'm not only committed to having a longevity of an employee, but I'm also, invested in an employee as a, member of the team, as a stock, as someone who's a part of the workforce, as a part, again, that's a part of an organizational structure, how a day-to-day operations goes. So anyway, why is it not PC? Because again, it leads you up to the area of not talking and being shut down and having these moments of not necessarily having, just from an organizational standpoint, the best, short answer. I don't want to have to spend 5 hours on this. Someone took their time to start this organization, to sit there and, try to do these different things. So it would behoove the company to not go through longer paperwork and longer tribulations that wouldn't necessarily make profit for them, if that makes sense. So it costs you money. If you don't know, firing someone costs you money because they get unemployment or they get these different things. So and also, if you didn't know this, if you fire someone and they apply and they work somewhere else, that makes your company look bad because you couldn't hold on to them, but someone else did. So now it's like nothing's wrong with them, but something's actually wrong with the person who fired them, which comes up to a whole other line of, clouds and gray area that is not necessarily good for business, because it just leads to, well, why didn't a conversation occur type of thing. And then it's more paperwork involved. And again, more time you have to sit and write this stuff down and work and build a business around it. So again, this is stuff that people started on their own. This is something that somebody sat down and, worked on. So they're not going to want to sit there with an individual employee necessarily to have to go through that process, while they might not be as seen as a different level, but it's still just an individual. So you have to understand it like that. There's only one CFO, right? Even though there's a lot of other, people involved. So anyway, long story short, okay, is, gray area. You want to avoid the gray area. You want to stay in something colorful, stay in something, okay, this is what this means. I got it. This is how I have to respond to this type of situation. You want to be in no, not in the confusion area, right? Okay. I'm going to be the no. Again, what is the way to go around to get around firing someone? Training. Simple. Companies do it all the time. They pay people to train people. It's like a part of the process. The employee is underperforming. Usually it's a reflection of the organization, not a reflection on the employee. I haven't found any cases that, this is like, why this transaction wasn't successful. There's always two to tango. You know what I mean? So anyway, firing someone also is a longer process. Retirement usually is another option. And why I mentioned retirement, just because you can usually save money from a company standpoint if you agree to retirement plans or some type of compensation up front, rather than having to pay for it by hiring someone to train people, by having to pay for explaining yourself why this person is doing so great at this place and why they couldn't do so well with you. And why this company had to go through this process of even having to deal with this, and why we couldn't just, again, go to the business structure that you wrote down, sit down, and get through. Why did what you said was going to happen didn't happen type of situation. So it just leads in terms of interview. If you have like one of the questions that leads to more of the interview questions, it's one of those. So if I've terminated someone before on like a survey that they give out to businesses and structures and different types of organizational things, organizations, organizational structures, they will say, 9 times out of 10, this company has a high rate of firing people. And that's not something that usually leads to, again, making money in the long run. So no one's, in terms of a public stock, is going to invest in you if you can have a higher rate of firing people, because it shows that you're not committed, again, to investing in something long, which is usually stock value. So you didn't know, when you work, you also pay property taxes or taxes. So depending on, where you are, there are ramifications as well from different city structures, because they might have they could be like the one paying for the training. So, or, think of it more like rent money that the company would have to pay to the venue to rent the space out, type of thing. Okay. So it's more like, even though you have a business, you still have to, buy the land. You have to do, things. Think of it more like that. So more people on the team you're putting, instead of having just like it be sort of more of a work, what you wanted, right? The organizational standard that you set down is this you want, right? So again, employees are a thing that you ask for. Okay. They're usually a thing that is something you advertise, you want, it brings money in. It shows that you're able to turn collateral, things like that. If someone were to invest in you, what would you do with the money, type of thing. So it just shows, again, that you're able to keep things consistent. Okay. Again, firing someone, this is just a longer process. Okay. You want retirement or some type of compensation to be a little bit more appropriate. Okay. And retirement can also be resignation. Okay. So I'll also say that as well. Resignation doesn't have to be something that is awkward. It's more about it being something that is a little bit more part of retirement. Okay. So think of it more like retirement, not necessarily like, there wasn't some type of equability or, mutual, understanding that it's equitable and it's, profitable on both ends. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that there for everyone. But I just think that was important to say. Everyone, especially my millennials, having to start their own not-for-profit and dealing with different employees and coming up with like different, as they say, restorative justice models. It's really important, especially consider disabilities and the ability of folks to complete jobs, and sometimes the responsibilities of the structures of the organization could also help, like scheduling, hiring by shift, if you will, and also just being a little bit more, particular with how you want to do it is something that can be worked out on paper, very equitable, so there you have it. All right, everyone. Well, it was nice talking with you all, and I will talk to you later. I wonder if we can hear the cat.